Good afternoon. Based on our previous topic on how to transform a given equation into a straight line graph equation or linear equation. Now, looking at the smart board, we have this equation t equals to 2 pi square root h minus g over h minus s over g. Remember, we are going to transform this equation into y equals mx plus c, a straight line graph or linear equation. We are going to make s the subject of the equation above. So we'll take you through the transformation process. So you sit tight and listen carefully. The first thing we'll do is square both sides of the equation. Square both sides of the equation. What that means is that t squared equals everything in the right hand side, on the right hand side will be squared h minus s over g all squared. Then the next thing, now you now have t squared equals everything squared. That means you're now having 2 pi, I'll separating them, 2 pi squared in bracket square root h minus s over g all squared. Then the next step, t squared equals, you expand this. This will give you 4 because 2 squared is 4. Then pi raised to the power of 2. Then remember, from your indices, square root is the same thing as saying raised to the power of a half. So we have the big bracket. This square root sign has gone out. Then h minus s over g raised to the power of a half raised to the power of 2. Notice the square root sign has changed to the power of a half, 1 over 2. Then you now have t squared equals 4 pi squared into, you multiply the powers together. This is 1 over 2 times 2 over 1. So you now have h minus s over g 2 over 2. Because 1 over 2 times 2 is 2 over 2. The 2 cancels out. What you have will be t squared equals 4 pi squared into h minus s over g bracket h minus s over g. Notice the transformational steps. So you take it step by step, applying some laws of indices and mathematical operation. Then, from where we are right now, I can eliminate this 4 pi by dividing both sides. Divide both sides by 4 pi squared. If you do that, you have t squared over 4 pi squared equal to h minus s over g. H, divide both sides by 4 pi squared. What you have is t squared over 4 pi squared equals h minus s over g. Remember, our target is to make s the subject of a formula. At this point, you can move the g up to this side so that we leave the h minus s standing alone on this side. So therefore, like cross multiplying, but just to cross multiply g. So we have g times t squared over 4 pi squared equals h minus s. H minus s. With this, we now have t squared over 4 pi squared equals h minus s. Since we want to make s the subject of formula, we can bring s on this other side of the equation by adding, we bring s to this other side of the equation by adding s to both sides. Add s to both sides. You add s to both sides. Adding s to both sides. Add s to both sides. By adding s to both sides, this s to both sides, you eliminate s here because you're going to have minus s plus s, which is 0. So we'll have s plus, we're adding the s to both sides, s plus gt squared over 4 pi squared equals to h. See, by adding s to both sides, you eliminate the s on this side and h stands alone. So from here, we can eliminate gt squared over 4 pi squared by subtracting it from both sides. You subtract gt squared over 4 pi squared from both sides. S will stand alone. Because when you say plus gt squared over 4 pi squared minus gt squared over 4 pi squared, it will cancel out itself. It will become 0. Then you now have h minus, you're subtracting gt squared over 4 from both sides. So you now have h minus gt squared over 4 pi squared. Yes, at this point you've succeeded in making s a subject of formula, but it is not in the form of a straight line graph yet. Y equals mx plus c. So we are going to rearrange this equation now to represent a straight line graph equation, y equals to mx plus c, where we will deduce our slope and our intercept. So we come here, we'll have to rearrange. Say s equals minus gt squared over 4 pi squared plus h. It's plus h because h here is positive. H here is positive. So h is positive, that's why it's plus. This term here is negative. You see, this negative sign affects only this term. That is why the negative sign is moving. That's move. See, just rearranging. You brought this guy forward and you brought this guy behind. So at this point, you now rearrange it further. You have S equals minus G over 4 pi squared. You can put bracket T squared plus H. At this point, it is in the form of y equals mx plus c. See, by rearranging this equation we got this one, y equals to minus g over 4 pi squared bracket times t squared plus h. With this, minus g over 4 pi squared is our m, while our y is s, because we are plotting a graph of y of s against t squared. So our x now becomes our t squared plus h. T squared plus h. I hope from the beginning all the way to this point you have understood basically how to transform a given equation into a straight line graph equation. More of this equation problem will be solved so that you understand it better. So at this point, I'll still continue, but I have to clear this off. Remember that our S is equal to minus G over 4 pi squared T squared plus H, where this equation is in the form of what? Y equals mx plus c. Remember, our y is equals to s, our x equals to t squared, m, the slope, is equals to minus g over 4 pi squared. Our c is equals to h, which is what? Intercept. The intercept, it could be on the x, it could be on the y-axis. But seeing here now, it shows that our slope is equal to negative value. Our slope is equal negative, or equals to a negative value. That means m is a negative value, or m is a negative value. From this, it means our m equals minus g over 4 pi squared. You see, our slope is negative. This implies that if you plot the graph should rather be in this form: s in the y-axis, s in the y-axis, and then t squared in the x-axis. The graph will be negative. The graph will be negative. Could be in this form. This is our graph, and then the slope you get could be this, or you could get this. Whichever one you're getting, it could be this or this. A The slope is negative. Slope is negative. You can see the slope of the graph S against t squared is in this form, where you plot your point that you've plotted. You use it to get the slope, this direction, theta, which is negative. The value increases this way, Slope, which is equal to minus g over 4 pi squared, is equals to change in the s over change in t squared. Change in s over change in t squared. You get what I'm saying? So this change will be, at this point you get your S2 value, then at this point you get your S1 value, your S1, and at this point you get your S2. That's the change now. Then at this point you get your, this point here, this point of the graph, you get your t squared one value, and then at this point here you get your t squared 2 value. So therefore at the end of the day, the change in s, the change in the s will now be S2 minus S1 over T2 squared minus T2 squared. Because the value of T1, is increasing this way, T squared, the value of T squared is increasing this way. So T squared 1 at this point is greater than T squared 2. So therefore when you subtract T, when you do, for example, if you have that T2, T squared 2 here is 2, and then T squared 1, this is 1, T squared 1 at this point is 5. If you subtract 5 from 1, it's going to be negative. That is where the slope now will now give you the slope now will now give you a negative will now be equal to negative because of the negative slope. A positive slope is in this format. It goes like this from the origin, or it could cut from here, or it could cut from here. These are positive slopes. Slope would start from the origin 0, or it could cut the x-axis where you have the intercept, this point, or it could cut the y-axis, you have the intercept. So on this graph now, this point where the marker is the intercept point. Also here, this point where the line cuts the x-axis or the y-axis or the s-axis, where the graph cuts the s-axis line, that's the intercept point. Also where the graph cuts the t-squared axis, that's the intercept point, just like here, this point is the intercept. Also here too, that point is the intercept. So I believe with this analysis from the beginning up to this point, you would understand how equation is transformed into a straight line graph equation, which was earlier stated as shown in the box. You transform a given equation into a straight line graph equation. It's simple and straightforward. All you need is to understand a simple mathematical algebraic steps. I wish you all the best. Thank you for watching and listening, and God bless you.